believe the two of you had met in the past. Let's make a formal introduction for our listeners from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Steve accepted our invitation to All About Music. Stephen Richard Hackett is an English musician, songwriter, singer, and producer who gained prominence as the lead guitarist of the progressive rock band called Genesis from 1971 to 1977. Steve, welcome to the show.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
How are you? So what we'll do like a sort of round robin. I will ask the first two questions, then Christian will take over, and then and so on and so forth, and then feel free to ask questions as well if you think it's appropriate. So
Sure.
the first question, Steve, it's why did you? I will ask you some simple question. Why did you decide to play the guitar instead of another instrument?
Well, I started off playing harmonica for 10 years before guitar. And I think the main drive was because I loved the sound of the guitar. And I wanted to know, because I was playing a single line instrument, I wanted to know what was the thing that gave notes direction. I couldn't describe it when I was a child because I wasn't learning formally. And I discovered many years later that those things were called chords. Harmony itself seemed to make things go up and down. Wherever the note was, it changed the whole emotional impact of each note. So guitar was important for me. Certainly in the late 1950s, there were guitar bands who were doing instrumental music, and all of it sounded a little bit like cowboy tunes. And that was how music sounded in the late 1950s and the early 1960s.
I got you. And I believe, thank you very much. I believe that you recently released an autobiography. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And how's it going with the stuff? Are you going to be kind of doing, well, pandemic is a big issue, but are you going to be touring a little bit and then showing your autobiography as well, or book signing, that sort of thing?
Well, I think that there were a lot of things planned.
Yeah.
And because of the pandemic, it means that I can't do the usual shows that I would have done at one time. And if I was to go doing book tours, it would be illegal right now. You know, you can't do it. You're not allowed to do it. So whatever I want to do is has to be put to one side. Instead, I'm doing lots of recording. So I'm recording a lot of different albums all at once. So I have one live album, which has just been released, selling them by the pound, revisited with Spectral Mornings Revisited. And I have an acoustic album, which is ready to go as well, acoustic orchestral. And I'm working on a rock album. So I'm working on 3 different projects, really, plus the book. So I've been very, very busy. Very busy, but it's a very productive time for me right now. Even the fact that I can't go touring doesn't mean that I can't be busy creatively, and so it's been an extraordinary time, really. Frustrating on one level, but on another level, I think it's been an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I think now go ahead, Kristen, if you wanna go ahead with questions.
Well, hi again, Steve. I think we've met like 3 times in Chile. Luckily,
yes, indeed.
Yeah, I've enjoyed your shows in a way that I cannot describe now, and I hope to enjoy them again. What I was going to ask you is precisely because of what you were saying. How do you usually face the composing process? I was going to ask you one song at a time, or can you work on several songs? Well, you just answered that. You were working on several projects. That's amazing. How do you do that?
How does it work? I think it's hard to describe the writing process. I think sometimes I write in an absolute fever of anticipation, and I get something written very, very quickly. And then one little bit will take me a long, long time. Today I was writing something very, very heavy and very, very slow, which was something about the state of the world and the inequality that goes on. I was writing, and then my wife joined me, and she was making suggestions, and we were writing together. We've written many things together, particularly in recent years, and so the process is a shared one. It's myself, but then it's also with my wife Jo, and also Roger King, who engineers. Working with him, I usually take things to a certain point, and then I might say to him, well, I think we need an orchestral moment here, and we can do a rough of that, and then we can add other musicians as we go recruiting. So it's an updating process the whole time, but I can't really tell you where music comes from. I think it's an emotional thing, and I've worked with musicians from all around the world. There's something I'm working on at the moment that has one person from Azerbaijan, another person from Tajikistan. I will have a drummer on it at some point. I don't know if that's going to be a British drummer or an American drummer. I don't know. I work with instruments all around the world, and people from all around the world. In fact, the last two rock albums I did, studio albums, we had 20 people from all over the world. And at the moment, one of the projects has one person from Armenia and one person from Azerbaijan, who, as you probably know, at the moment are in conflict. Those two nations are in conflict. And it seems to me that music is able to do something that politics refuses to do. And this is a very big part of my philosophy right now, is to be able to demonstrate that people can get on. And now one of the albums I did two projects ago, an album called The Night Siren, we had one Israeli person and one Palestinian on the same project who were friends. And sometimes the girl was saying, Mira Awad was saying, sometimes her own people blame her for this, for trying to do anything that heals the divide. So it's not always a case of blessed are the peacemakers. Sometimes it is a case of cursed are the peacemakers. So you stick your head above the parapet, and people accuse you of not being sufficiently nationalistic. But my own feeling is that nationalism is the reason why, or part of the reason why, the world is in such a terrible chaos right now, and it cannot be the answer. Anyway, you could say it was removed from music, but it's just the way I work right now. I've worked with lots of great people, but sometimes the concepts go further than the actual music, and it's about harmony in a much wider sense of the word. So you can call me an idealist, but I'm working on a very angry song right now.
Well, hope we can listen to that soon. Shall I go on with the next one, Claudio?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Steve, I was going to ask you, what are some of the pieces you had to work on harder after conceiving the very first course, like the pieces that you've started and then you realize that it's becoming bigger and bigger, and then you have to pay special attention to that one? It's a weird question, but you know what I mean, like the big songs.
Yeah, I think sometimes because of digital technology, it's possible to have an endless amount of tracks. And I think that the song I'm working on at the moment, Roger King, who's engineering it and playing keyboards and involved with the arrangement and everything that we share, he said we're up to over 140 tracks at the moment on this one song, and that's not unusual for us. And sometimes the computer just gives up and goes blur, and then we have to reboot it and restart it and get it to start chasing commands that it forgets. You know, ambitious music is like that, but sometimes I like to do something that's much simpler, which is to do an acoustic album. It can be much simpler. Again, you know, you have the possibility of the orchestral stuff, and if you're having each instrument having a track or two, it starts to eat those tracks. So but we think that the devil is in the detail, and to make something really good, you have to work on the detail of it. Unless you happen to be very gifted and you just play something absolutely marvelously, like a jazz musician or a blues musician, and you happen to get it all in one go. And I've worked with many people who are like that, who are brilliant musicians, but then I think the actual form of the song will not necessarily be surprising. And it's a bit like music treated as sport. You get someone who can play furiously fast, and you know, it can end up becoming a competition. Whereas I think the best of progressive work enables you to have music that's full of surprises, dynamically, geographically, historically, and you can really start mixing things up. But it does make life complicated. But you know, that's the process of being a solo performer, I think, as opposed to being in a band where you can sit in the rehearsal room together and say, hey, what do you think? You know, just like Genesis, you know, it's like kicking around a football from one person to the next. And so the things that seemed like complicated numbers at that time are actually very simple compared to what I'm currently doing.
All right. Now, I would also like to ask you, Steve, what are your sources of musical inspiration, as well as those like extra musical ones? Like on your posts and record booklets, you deal a lot with your worldwide trips. Maybe there are some influences from literature, mythology, and I dare saying that maybe Joe, who sometimes contributes, maybe she has to do with history of art. She seems to have been, studied that, or judging by her contributions to your albums.
Yes, I think travel is part of it. Some songs have literally become travelogues. We're not unique in that, but I think it's absolutely marvelous to be informed and discover new instruments. First of all, you hear something, you think it sounds very strange, and then you think, well, maybe I can work with this. I can, by assimilating it in some way, I can break it down and start to understand that perhaps it's working in a certain mode, and there might be a way to, as I say, assimilate it or even imitate it in some way. I mean, recently I've been doing a track which is Oriental and using a Vietnamese instrument, a Vietnamese zither, very similar to the Chinese koto, and working with that was interesting. But then I was trying to imitate something with guitar that sounds very much like an Indian flute, and by using technology in a certain way with my pedals and what have you, I can do something that's absolutely unrecognizable as guitar. I think most people would think it's a flute if I'm using the ebow on the guitar, and then I'm putting it through a line 6 device that's sending half of what I'm playing backwards, and also sometimes using a wah-wah to favor a certain harmonic. It's very boring talking about it, but the effect, I like to think, is potentially spectacular at the end of the day. But most people, I don't think it's a spectator sport watching somebody record. You know, it might be working at the speed of film, and an onlooker might be going, well, why isn't there anything happening right now? And it's so much of it is setting things up and plugging things in. So for the listener, they just get to hear the finished thing. And it's a bit like someone writing. Nobody knows how many times the writer has to cross out a line and start again. So that was the case when I was writing the book. Lots of rewriting to try and make it more entertaining.
I see. Claudio?
Yeah, Steve, looking back, you have the opportunity to, play with Genesis, but other band before you joined Genesis, and with a lot of great musicians. How is it like to play with musicians like Steve Howe, Brian May, Chris Squire?
Well, all of those musicians have done stunning work in their lifetime, and working with someone face to face, you realize that nobody is a genius all the time. What happens is there's a process that you go through of eliminating all the stuff that is ordinary to get to something that is extraordinary. So that's what makes all those people similar, is that they all work very, very hard, and they all come up with something stunning in the end. But it's this process that people go through. I wish I could describe it, but I think for the listener, people assume that they listen to an album that might be anything from 45 minutes through to maybe an hour, and it may well be that people think, well, that's how long it took to put together, because they can hear it all, but actually it's more like sculpture or painting. There are layers that go on and layers that come off. You're trying to get to the essence of something, but all the people you've mentioned are brilliant guitarists, and I'm very lucky to have worked with them all.
Wow. Another question for me. If now that you are at home and I have the opportunity perhaps listen to a lot of different band, different group, is one or two, or you can mention any number you want, any artists or bands that you really like?
Yes, well, funnily enough, I've just been talking to Guy Garvey of Elbow, if you're aware of that band, and he was interviewing me on radio, on his radio show, and we've made friends, and found it very interesting. We were talking about Kate Bush's work, and it was a very, very interesting conversation where we were saying we liked each other's work very much, and so that's really been quite wonderful. And I'm sorry I've forgotten the original question, but it's getting a little late at night here, so
No, that's right.
I'm slowing up a little, so you have to excuse me.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Christian.
All right, Steve. I was very disappointed to see that the transparent record, the box set, it flew, it vanished. I hope to put my hands on one of those sets if you decide to repress it. I was going to ask you, assuming that you probably record most of your shows, how many sound files do you listen to before deciding the right ones to become a record? Have you ever considered releasing more than just one album per tour? Some artists sometimes sell or publish whole sets of concerts from one tour.
Yeah. Well, up to now, I've always tried to maintain a kind of quality control. So the latest album, that's Setting England by the Pound, Spectral Mornings, we have a surround mix by Stephen Wilson, a stereo mix by Roger King, and where possible I get involved and make some kind of contribution to the sounds, the drum sound, the balance. So up to now we haven't released everything, but it's possible. It may be that's a way we could function in the future. But I think what you have to do with what you're saying is you take everything warts and all, with all the mistakes and everything, and you accept that the sound isn't going to necessarily be that pristine. So it's a bit like doing your own bootlegs, that kind of thing. Some bootlegs can be very good. warts and all, can be very good. I've discovered some shows that I've done that I thought sounded really great without any without doing anything to them. So indeed, it's possible. Yes.
And how did now that you mention him, I became a fan. Sorry, I became a fan of Porcupine Tree back in the mid-90s. And then the man is amazing. How do you value Mr. Steven Wilson? Obviously, everybody is after him because they want their albums to be remastered, remixed. He has something that goes beyond, being a great musician, obviously.
Well, having spoken to him recently, he was looking forward to touring, and he was just at the point where he was going to be doing sort of a tour of arenas, less shows, but bigger ones. And suddenly the pandemic meant that he couldn't do that. So to some degree, he said to me, well, I'm not doing anything right now. And I couldn't get anyone to mix this thing in surround in short notice. And he said, yeah, I could do that for you. Sure. And he said he's going to be working with various people. I had a conversation with him yesterday, and he said, oh, I'm going to be doing something for Tears for Fears, and etc. And I believe he'd worked with them before. So he's very, very busy with that. But I think that he felt that, being a facility for other people, in fact, he described himself as an engineer, first of all. That's how he thought of himself, his prime role. And obviously, ever since then, he's become much more than that. Yes, singer, band leader, guitarist, conceptual thinker, all of that thing. But in a way, circumstances have meant that he's specializing once again in facilitating other people's work. And, that's a plus on one level, but it's also, I think, frustrating for him. So he obviously wants to be out there touring right now, and he can't do that. But we all do what we can do at this point in time. I mean, no one is no one is a god right now. We can't wave the magic wand, and we do what's possible rather than what is ultimately desirable.
And Steve, what keeps you creating new music while other musicians, of your generation live mostly on nostalgia or have even quit as performers or composers, and you go on, which is amazing. And if we relate to the other Genesis members, I'm not sure how they see this permanent touring of you with the material. I don't know if you have contact with them. And where do you get the inspiration? Because you are like a non-stop man.
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for other people, but I've often wondered what why I'm driven to do what I do. It may well be that it's partly to do with on my mother's side of the family. We seem to come from a Jewish line or two, and I've never really felt Jewish as such, but I'd learned that there were many musicians in the background from that side, and there are also people who tend to live a very long time as well. For some reason, I had an uncle who lived until he was 108 years old, and I have an aunt who's 102, who's about to become 103. My mother is 90, but she looks she looks much younger, shall we say, and so I seem to be blessed so far, with good health, touch wood. But for any of us, any moment, we know we aren't going to live forever. But there is something about this. I think maybe the drive is to do with the fact that they were refugees at one time, arriving in the late 1800s, and they were They arrived in England and worked very, very hard, and they didn't have much money, but you know, they were a community. They worked very, very hard, and there was music, there was entertainment, there were these things for the lucky ones who had the gift of music. I think this was a driving force that is not only on my side of the family, also on my wife Jo's side of the family. There are a number of violinists. Her father, her grandfather, they played violin and taught violin. On my side, there was my father as well, who was musical, played a number of instruments just for fun, and many others. So that it seems as if it's in the genes. And I think when you grow up surrounded by music and you have a musical father, you know, each boy wants to be his father. And I happen to have a very talented, sweet man for a father, and I miss him greatly.
Thank you, Steve. After leaving Genesis, was it? I imagine that was very hard. You need to make a decision. Well, on one hand, I like playing for this guy, but I want to do my own thing. Should I leave? Should I not leave? Was it? And you were at the time very, very young, so quite sure that it wasn't. It was it hard for you to launch your solo career and gamble and say, well, I want to go on my own. I have my own thing, my own ideas, right?
Well, I think, you know, if you walk away from a very famous, successful band, you have to be aware that you can't win the race against all that background. You know, it's a bit like, I always thought music was a bit like a marathon race. It was about the guys who were still in the game, in a way. This is a conversation that I had with Royner Stolt. He said the same thing. Royner of the Flower Kings, very talented guy, and he said it's about the guys who are still in the game. In other words, it's about the guys who can't give up music because that's what they are. That's what they do. I guess, you know, you can have tremendous success when you're young, and you can give it up and do something else. And I've known many people who were fantastically talented, but became no longer motivated to carry that on into middle age and beyond. People have other priorities. Of course, we're all subject to human frailty. Luckily, everything's working. As of this moment, my hands work, my ears work, and the brain sometimes works too, but not as fast as I would like it to.
Then I don't know if this is. I read this online when I was researching a little bit about your early part of your career. Is it true that before you joined Genesis at the time, obviously we didn't have the internet and social media and that sort of thing. So is it true that you place an ad? You're looking for like a sort of progressive musician. You were planning to join a band, and Peter Gabriel responded to your ad. Is that true?
Yeah, it sounds very easy. Like you put an ad in the paper and then
Yeah.
Peter Gabriel phones up. Actually, I was advertising for 5 years, so there were a tremendous amount of ads. 5 years of ads, and I met lots of musicians, some of whom were very talented. I made an album with a band called Quiet World, and then a year later, I placed an ad, and the wording kept changing of the ad. I became more and more idealistic, and I decided I would put in an ad that read very different to everyone else, and that's why Peter Gabriel called me very idealistic advert.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Go ahead, Christian.
All right, Mr. Thank you, Claudio. Steve, what musicians would you like to make some collaboration with, or what new music trends maybe you would like to? Would you feel interested in exploring that you haven't, obviously?
Well, I'm making friends all the time, and it's very interesting to me, how there are, you know, music has become factionalized. At one time, of course, you know, you had this tremendous movement within folk music. First of all, the protest songs, the social comment, um, the movement that spawned Bob Dylan and Buffy Sainte-Marie and Richie Havens, and people who sang with passion and ideals. And I'm open to the idea of collaborations with people who are like that. But normally I find that, you know, collaborations can, they can be great, but it can really slow you down. Whereas many of the people I've been working with in recent years, they may not be household names yet, but some of them have become that. And so I'm already working with people that I think are incredible. And what I hope is that they will all become stars that they deserve to be in their own right. And many of these people are getting better at what they do. So I'm fortunate to have a band at the moment who are tremendously virtuosic and hardworking. And they, you know, I was talking to Craig Blundell, the drummer, who's been working with me live and has just started recording with me. And I said, oh, you know, I've been working on 3 albums. You know, and he said to me, yeah, I've just finished 14 albums. That's how
Wow.
hardworking he is. 14 albums with different people. So this guy is really, really busy, and it gives you an idea how driven he is. You know, so I guess that's it. You know, if you're a facility for other people rather than doing your own albums, then yes, you could say, you know, you can do all this. You know, I just did some stuff for some Italian people, um, but I was having to say to people, I can't work on your projects right now because I'm trying to finish an album right now. You know, I have to finish that first of all, so I can't just work with everybody. Um, but yeah, it would be nice to do things with some of my pals who are very, very famous indeed. But it gets a little more complicated, you understand, when this happens, because, you know, people have their own ideas. It's not like I phone them up when I say, "Oh, can you do me a quick solo here?"
Hmm.
You know, the more the personality, you have to try and deliver whatever it is that people expect. You know, people want something great from a great performer, of course, from a great singer. Um, and greatness takes time, I think.
It does. Now, Steve, I want to congratulate you really because I wasn't there. I didn't have the chance. The version of Supper's Ready that I've seen on YouTube seems, I mean, I think it was left out of the new album, the live album. It's absolutely breathtaking, really. It's amazing. And I wanted to ask you about how you see the relation between rock and the symphonic format, because it came out so well, the whole set, the whole tour.
Yeah, I was touring with a couple of years ago. I was touring with an orchestra, and we did a show in London. We did a whole British tour, and we did some shows at the Palladium, and it can be wonderful to work with an orchestra. But on the latest album, I was specializing mainly in 2 albums. It was the whole of Selling England by the Pound and Spectral Mornings. So I love the idea of groups working with orchestras or artists working with orchestra, because I spend a lot of time listening to the beauty of classical music. Everything from Bach to the Russian romantic composers, and the more modern um, Russian composers, for instance. And many of these people have been great orchestrators, sublimely good. And this is really the thing that separates the men from the boys. And so I love that. I think there are some bands who've worked with orchestras very well. The Beatles, first of all, with George Martin, Procol Harum, I think, with their use of orchestra, has been stunning at times. But, you know, a lot of the time you have to go back to the early 1960s or 1970s to hear, you know, the best of what has been possible with these two separate schools of thought: a group, rock and roll, and classical music with orchestras.
All right, then one more thing, Steve. Sorry, your travels clearly inspire you all the time. What places have stricken you the most visually and emotionally? Like Jordan, for example. I think I read something about that.
Yes, Jordan was extraordinary, very wonderful, and the desert itself is something just wonderful, to be able to travel to places that at one time would only have been accessible on camel, and then recently we were in Egypt, and we did a trip along the Nile to see the antiquities, and some of it looks like it was just built and sculpted and painted yesterday. It's so fresh and it's so wonderful, and stuff that was built in sandstone. And of course the music influences you too from these places. Ethiopia, India, so much of this. So I've worked with music from India, musicians from India, and all the other places. Peru, I've worked with Peruvian instruments in recent years, and of course Peru is extraordinary in so many ways. There's nowhere like it. It's extraordinary, you know. I mean, the whole of South America is stunning, of course. In so many ways, you have so much richness, and of course, we're in danger of losing absolutely everything at the moment, and we have to be careful. You know, one minute we've got elephants and rhinos, and then the next we don't. 1 minute we've got forests, and then the next we don't. So. Yeah, we have to be very careful with nature, and most of the time the profit motive is what has placed us in this terrible pandemic right now. So we have to be respectful of nature and realize that if we want to have a long, prosperous and healthy life, we have to help each other, and we have to help nature. Personally, I'm feeding animals in the garden. I can't travel, but you know, I'm just putting out food for the birds and the squirrels, and sometimes the foxes, and I get great pleasure out of seeing them.
You seem to have a thing for animals, don't you? Like wolves, dogs. They have record covers.
Well, I think that it happened. I think when I was a child, I was scared of everything, and then later on in the course of a lifetime, you get to climb onto the back of a camel. You get to play with a lion. You get to stroke huge vicious dogs that at one time, and they show you love. You know, they return it to you, and when an animal responds to you, you know that it's real. It's there's no agenda. It's you get complete honesty, and I know many people prefer animals to human beings. I think because of that, you know, there's no artifice. You are a friend or you're not, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Honesty and loyalty from animals is like there's nothing like that, really. Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Steve.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, really. Yeah.
Yeah, Steve. So we are aware of your time, and I know it's late where you are. I don't know if we have time for a final question or one, two.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let me do one, Christian, and then you close that with the next one. Looking back in your career, do you have a favorite Genesis album and then a non-Genesis album? If you were to
Um,
pick two, one yours and then one with them.
well, I for me, I think "Selling England by the Pound" was the album that I felt closest to from 1973. Even, you know, it's a long time ago now. Yes, I mean in 3 years' time or less, it will be 50 years old. It's an extraordinary thought, isn't it? But that was an album that John Lennon said Genesis was one of the bands he was listening to at that time. He gave an interview and said that. And for me, I'm very proud that he said that. Whether he meant it or not, you know, it's just great that he thought that he'd give us a name check. That was really wonderful for me. And of course, John Lennon, hugely talented. What can you say about the glorious work of that man?
Right. On my part, can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
On my part, yeah. Okay, Steve. On my part, I'd like to ask you about the coming album. You say you're recording several projects. I hear that there's a rock album coming out.
Yeah, there will eventually. I think they will come out next year sometime. So officially, I'm only supposed to be talking about the live album, but I'm so frustrated at not being able to tour live. I can't tell people exactly when everything will come out, but I think as a live album, the Selling England by the Pound Spectral Mornings one is probably the best I've ever done live. I think it's a stronger product. It's selling better than anything I've done. Wonderful mixes by two people who are absolute geniuses. So I had great fun revisiting that year of 1973 and the other year of 1979, plus some recent stuff as well on that album. So that's part of it.
The last thing that we were talking about the live album is: are you going to include Supper's Ready, the live version, on some extra bonus track and future release or something?
Well,
I think I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, I have released. There are actually many versions that I've released on previous solo albums.
There's one on YouTube that is with the orchestra. It's incredible.
Yeah, that one is on. That's called Live. I'm trying to remember the name of the album, but it's from the Palladium, and it's live with the Heart of England Philharmonic Orchestra. So that one is available. People can get it from the website, hackettsongs.com, and then that puts you in touch with the Sandbag, who are our web store, and so people can get it via that. So hackettsongs.com is my website.
Thank you very much. Well, on my part, thank you very much, Steve, for your time. I don't know if you know, but we exchanged a couple of emails with Amanda Lehman last year. So I hope that we make contact.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I hope to be. Well, yeah, if you happen to talk to her, I think I might write to her soon so that we can do the interview.
That's a great idea. She's recording really wonderful stuff herself right now, and she's getting more and more interest in that.
Okay.
So I'm very pleased about that.
Say hi to Joe. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, that was our interview with Steve Hackett, and thank you very much for your time, Steve. As a matter of fact, in the radio, we are playing as we are talking to you. At least to me, one of your favorite albums, that's Blues with a Feeling.
Oh, thank you.
It's an unbelievable album, and
I'm glad you like it. Thank you.
Yeah, and people love you in Latin America, and especially in Chile. I don't need to tell you that because.
Oh, thank you very much.
We hope to see you. Stay healthy, see new album, and see you on the road soon.
Thank you so much, guys. Claudio and Christian, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Ciao, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.